For Katara being a waterbender, she is very resistant to change. Hey guys, welcome to Before You Read. Today we're going to be talking about North and South. It is a non-spoiler review. If you want to join into our spoiler review, just join us on our After You Read North and South. As always, we're going to talk about what I like, what I didn't like, and if I recommend it. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. So what I like, and it's actually talking about Katara, is that it's actually very consistent with Katara. Now, most people would take this to be something I didn't like because it's something that I don't like in terms of the quality of character. In terms of Katara, it's something that I always was annoyed about with her, is that she projects a lot. Like, she has this, holier than whatever kind of mentality, like whatever her way is the highway sometimes. And while, yes, I don't like this in terms of like if I knew Katara personally, I do like this as a narrative device, and it's very consistent for the way that she was in the show, and that if she doesn't get her own way, if someone doesn't agree with her worldview, she generally does not do with them very well, and that plays a huge role in this story where the main theme is kind of about tradition versus progress. And she has a major issue with the progress that is happening in the South Pole, which she hasn't been to for a year or two since the end of the show. So I'm very glad that the writer actually kept that personality trait of hers, and that it's not that it just went away and that it's something that doesn't exist for her. Even though it's something I don't like about her personally, I think it's consistent, very consistent with the kind of character that was presented for us in the show. I also love the Sokka funnies. Again, like I've been saying about these comic reviews all the way through, Sokka has been more effective for me in the comics than he even was in the show itself. That continues here. I also can say that I am now a shipper of Taka. As you guys know, or if you guys have already read the comic book, there's a certain sequence in the comic book during a festival scene, and there were some very cutesy moments. Now, the comic itself doesn't actually play into like them being a couple or anything like that, but I totally did, and I totally read into that situation of being like, you know what, those two. I also like the commentary about power versus cooperation, egalitarianism, to kind of like this more imperialistic thought process that you have the Earth and the Fire Nations. They kind of are very about that funneling into one person, funneling all of their power into one person, to one entity, to one government situation. And then of course you have the water tribes, who with the South more so, they're still very much an egalitarian society. The North is kind of pushing them to become more of a more civilized nation, and I think that was a big thing that came up in this work, is that it kind of put into question what even is civilization. Is civilization good? But it also plays into something what I didn't like, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I do like that these things are actually brought up, and I like the idea of like thinking about the air nomads and thinking about the original North and South and how they didn't have as much conflict because of the way they conducted their societies, while the Earth Kingdom is the one who's just mired in that kind of a thing. And then the Fire Nation also, of course, we know what happens with them in the TV show and the genocide and all that stuff. And also what I really like about these comics, and just this is the same as I've enjoyed from this comic as the other comics, is that just a lot of the background scenes are just so perfect. They have such attention to detail, to like, you'll see a scene taking place and then something in the background will be happening, and I think it's either it'd be like a really cute moment or kind of like that's totally what would happen. And I think they do that very well. Again, like I've been saying before, the voices and the characterization of these characters are great. I think that they continue doing that. Now, my issue with the series, or with this comic in general, as we move on to what I didn't like, is that it's starting to feel a little bit like a formula. Like reading about 4 of these now we're on the 5th one. It feels like it's kind of playing the same kind of trope, which I know is the case for middle grade works, and this does definitely kind of cater to more middle grade, low end YA, young adult, material, and that you do have a formula to how it plays out. That's similar to how you have for the beginning Percy Jackson books, how you have for the beginning of Harry Potter books. You kind of feel that here, where it's kind of like, they come to a place, there's an issue between tradition and progress, and then nothing really happens. And that's kind of the main issue I have with this series, is that the resolution didn't feel like a resolution. It just kind of felt like, okay, conflict happened, and they didn't really learn anything from the antagonists and the opposing faction and their thoughts and how they would meld that and move that forward. They just kind of go like, well, we got rid of that situation. and it just ends. And I didn't really like that. I think Avatar is better than that. I think Avatar genuinely does better. They actually usually show how, you know, two sorts of mentalities can push forward. We saw that with The Rift, which I say is my favorite. I think that's my favorite graphic novel of this set, and how we saw, you know, not only tradition and progress between benders and non-benders, but also, you know, like the old times with the spirits and then the humans of the new age, and seeing how that can, and having at least at the end of that book some form of, oh hey, this is what we could do going forward in the future. But in this book, we kind of end on just a celebration dinner, but not actually figuring out how to make progress or how to make both sides, you know, work together. And yeah, that just didn't work for me. And I would even say, like, there's a even part, like, getting into like the plot of it, there's a character who gets kidnapped at the end of the book, and it was probably the worst character that they could have chosen to get kidnapped, because it's the one I had the least interest in, and I didn't really care what would happen to that person, and it kind of just deflated all of the tension of the third act of the third book. And also, I'm still not used to Aang and Katara calling each other sweetie. I still can't do it. I can't do it. I'm sorry. So moving on to the recommendation. So would I recommend this? So here's the thing about this book. I think that its individual scenes, again, going through it is good. I think that they have really good jokes. It's well written, like beat to beat, and like character dialogue between each other. I think all of that still works. The action is still really cool. Like you get to see the bending, and you can visualize what it will look like if it was fully animated. All of that still works, but I just feel like the actual story itself and what the story was trying to tell us, and the progression of that story, and how that played out in this graphic novel itself doesn't wrap up nicely. And it's not something that I like I said, I felt empty at the end of it, and I didn't feel like I got satisfied, or I got a good answer to these two opposing thoughts and these two opposing factions. So I guess I can recommend it if you just enjoy Avatar. Like, if you're an Avatar fan, I think you'll find enjoyment of it, because you're just spending time with the gang and seeing how, you know, life is going on for them. But in terms of just story, like on a vacuum scale, I want to say that you can kind of skip it, because we've kind of gotten these stories at least 2 other times in the series, like definitely in The Rift and a little bit in The Promise, just a little bit. So it's definitely feeling like it's starting to recur. It feels a little bit redundant in its storytelling. So if you want to look for one to kind of skip, I think you can skip this one, because I think The Rift does it better. But again, if you're an Avatar fan and you just want to get more time with the gang, then yeah, definitely want to read it. But that is it. I want to know what you guys think about the comic in the comments below. Let me know, and I'll see you guys on the next one. As always, peace, love, and remember, be water, my friends.